Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel. If you have not heard or seen of us before, we are the Fight and Talk 2 team. We'll break down the fights. Hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends, and if you enjoy the content, leave us a little comment as well. Myself and Prath will be discussing the events from UFC 263 last night. But how are you, Prath? All good?
Doing good, man. Enjoying this beautiful Sunday in London. 28 degrees today, like insane weather. I went outside to try and get some shade and get some fresh air, and I couldn't find any. So I came back to my flat, and I've just been sitting in front of the AC all day. How about yourself?
Yeah, man. I went for lunch. It was nice, but it is very, very hot, as you say, man. And I made the mistake of wearing grey when I should have just been wearing my Fight and Talk 2 t-shirt. But it is what it is. I'll know for next time. Now, we'll get straight into the fights because there was a lot that went on yesterday. And obviously, a lot of time was spent in the octagon. I believe there was a statistic on Twitter that I saw yesterday that this was the most amount of ring time ever at a pay-per-view event. And I think it beat it by like 15 or 20 minutes. Quite a lot of these fights went to a decision. And obviously, it was very, very difficult, as you know, to stay awake for these because over in the UK, the fights were on at kind of, 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And then when you're getting these decision after decision after decision, it's very, very difficult to stay awake. You know, if we'd have seen maybe the Jamahal Hill, Paul Craig arm break a little bit earlier on, we would have, we might have been a bit more on the edge of our seat ready for this, but we'll get straight into the card, man. Chase Hooper was obviously out yesterday, young, fresh-faced. What did you think of his performance? Because he is very, very young, and it's always going to be difficult for him to fight anyone because they're going to be so much older than him. But what did you take away from his performance, and where do you think he goes from here?
Yeah, Steven Peterson seemed much bigger than him in the octagon as well, and it was a catchweight fight, right? So Steven Peterson obviously struggled to make those last couple of pounds there, and it was very evident in the octagon. Even when Chase was trying to grapple him to try and take him down, he was often having to like pull guard to just try and get it to the floor and stuff.
Yeah.
And what you found there in those situations that Steven Peterson was just able to ground and pound him from the top there and just score points and win. So just it was a clean victory, clean sweep, 30-27. One judge gave it to Chase, 29-28. But, I think it will be a learning experience for Chase Hooper. Again, he's so young in the game. He's going to take, 2, 3, 4 fights before he really hits his stride and becomes, I think, the fighter that he expects to be inside of the UFC, which is clearly like that Ryan Hall style where he's just going to kind of shoot on the legs or like try and just jump straight into a submission. On the commentary, they were talking about him training with Ryan Hall, which I think is a great option for him because I think he's obviously displayed that he's got incredible grappling inside the octagon and being able to do those, those Imanari rolls and those very unique attacks in the octagon. And I think, having a couple more training camps behind Ryan Hall, someone like that, he's only going to get so much more better. So I'm very excited for his future, but just a nice clean victory for Steven Peterson as he moves up the featherweight, the featherweight rankings and whatnot.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, like we always say,
I don't see him as I was just going to say, I don't see him. Sorry. Just going to say, I don't really see him as like a 145-pound contender, someone that's really like knocking on the door of a title shot. Maybe in the next couple of fights, I really see a difference there. He came from winning a spinning back fist knockout, which was incredible. Like that was much of the highlight reel that you saw of Steven Peterson during fight week. And, I want to see him get back to those performances that are savage in the octagon. So I'm hoping he takes the confidence of this win and he can push it forward and maybe get a stoppage in his next fight.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously with Chase having that kind of Ryan Hall attacking method, he's usually always going to push for a decision win, isn't he? And the judges obviously had a lot to do yesterday because there was so many decisions after decision after decision. And for me, I thought that most of the fights were very evident of who won. But as you said, some of these judges are still giving it to the other guy. Can you recall which judge it was?
I think it was it was a unanimous decision, but they gave one round to Chase Hooper is what I meant. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, because I know for the other fights there was a bit.
I mean, if there was a split decision, I wouldn't be surprised too much.
Yeah, of course.
I would say for the most part they did okay.
Yeah,
I
they
take
did all
that with
right.
a grain of salt. They did
And
okay.
we were even saying on the pre-fight that we hope that it doesn't go to too many decisions because these judges make terrible, terrible decisions sometimes. And I think even Israel Adesanya in the press conference, the pre-fight press conference, he said, "I'm going to beat you to Vittori. Obviously, I'm going to beat you so bad, even Chris Lee will get it right." So, and for a fighter to say that, and for a fighter to really, really know that this judge is absolutely horrific at their job, you know, the UFC have got to start doing something at some point. But some one of the fighters that didn't need the judges obviously was the next fight that we're going to talk about. Matt the Steamroller Frevola got unfortunately steamrolled himself in the fourth quickest knockout in the UFC history from Terrence McKinney. And you know, you know a little bit about this guy's backstory, and obviously Joe Rogan didn't want to hear it because when he said, "Can I come on your show?" Joe Rogan pretty much just went, "Yeah, cool," and then just, you know, really like shut him down in the octagon. But, you know, tell us about Terrence McKinney's story before we get into the fight.
Well, just from obviously our guy in Casual Corner, even though he's casual, he's just at the top of the news cycle every single time. He's the guy that's obviously giving us feeding us a lot of this information. So a hat tip to young George. Apparently he got tasered when he was much younger, suffered a cardiac arrest, and managed to make his way out of that, recover, and now he's in the position that he's in. You know, he fought like the week before or 2 weeks before that, I want to say, as well, for LFA for a title fight, and then he's come straight into a UFC fight and knocked the dude out in 7 seconds. Like, wow, like what a performance. I mean, can we even call it a performance? He hit him with a 1-2 and stung him, and then like followed up with some ground and pound, and that was it. So amazing knockout. Caught him clean on the button. It was a beautiful setup. Fainted, I think it was a right left, I want to say. So you know, set him up perfectly for it. He kind of walked into it as well, so you could kind of see as he hit him, he kind of went like forward and down, and that was it. Referee steps in, and Terrence McKinney jumps onto the side of the octagon to celebrate, jumps off of it and hurts his knee on the process. This is exactly why Dana White hates dudes doing flips off the cage. In this situation, he didn't do a flip off the cage. He kind of just climbed to the top of the octagon, and as he I think he was just so excited, he kind of like pushed off the octagon and landed on his knee and hurt his knee clearly. So I'm hoping he's not out for too long. He can turn around quickly. You know, 7-second win means that he didn't take a single lick of damage in there as well. So let's get him back in there and let's get these guys fights, man. Let's get these guys rolling. Let's get these guys up the division. We've brought in a guy now who's had the 4th fastest knockout in the UFC. Don't make this guy sit around for 6 months unless he's injured. Don't make this guy sit around for 6 months waiting for the right fight per se. I think these guys just need to really just step up and take as many fights as possible. I think that's what the fans really enjoy. Really enjoy seeing a guy multiple times. That's why Khamzat Chimaev was so, obviously he's so dominant as well, and that's why people love him. But I think as well, he fought so frequently that people were just like so amazed at the fact that this guy was turning around so quickly, when typically fighters will turn around maybe once or twice a year. Sometimes if that, especially in the last year or so during the pandemic and stuff. So let's hopefully, if his knee is not injured, let's get him back in there. Let's get him another lightweight fighter. Matt Frevola was someone that was very highly touted as well, someone that the people were watching on the rise as well. He has great hands. He's got great speed. He's got great grappling as well. So, and I believe he trains out of the Longo fight team with Aljamain Sterling, Chris Weidman, all those guys. Unfortunate for him, he's obviously going to be on the receiving end of the highlight reel for the rest of his life, and that's really unfortunate for him. So I'm hoping he can bounce back and maybe get a highlight reel of his own.
Fingers crossed, man, because it's from a fan perspective, we see a 7-second knockout and we go, wow, that was really good. But in fact, it doesn't really give us a lot of information about the fighter or how they're going to perform next, or what their career trajectory is going to be like, because you don't really get to see a great amount of what they've been doing. And he has got a fantastic backstory. It'd be great to, to share that more with everyone. The fact that he's gone through different bits and pieces in his life as well. And do you remember when Johnny Walker broke his shoulder, didn't he, while he was doing the worm afterwards? I think that, it should be like football celebrations, for instance, maybe just do a little, I don't know, everyone get together and play the violin or do some weird stuff that people do when they play football and score a goal. But I feel
T-shirt
like
over his head.
yeah, find a T-shirt from somewhere real quick and put it over your head. But I feel like we talk about this guy a lot on this show, but Michael Page has always got like a plan for his victories. And when he did like the Pokeball thing and he did the gauntlet thing, like it's pre-planned and it's very Instagrammable, and it's very kind of, I'm going to get my 2 seconds of fame, but with this particular thing. Whereas when these fighters are jumping on the side of the octagon, jumping off, hurting themselves, breaking toes, breaking feet, I actually thought that when he jumped up to the side, it was where he put his foot in the cage, because I don't know if you've ever climbed like a mesh cage like that. It hurts, especially on bare foot, like it rips between your toes. I just don't understand why anyone would want to do that, or even jump up to the side, and just, why are you taking the risk? Your body is your money maker. Why are you taking a risk?
Because I feel like you see a lot of these guys jump up onto the side of the octagon, right? And they sit like perpendicular on the octagon. And I think they just take in that energy from the crowd. Like the crowd that night the biggest win out of this entire card, right? This card was like pretty decent. There was a good couple of victories on this card, but for me, like watching it back, the fans made that event what it was. It was incredible to see the energy being poured into these guys. Like when Brandon Moreno won, like the energy was electric in there. And I think when you're watching any of these guys like Terrence McKinney knocking someone out in 7 seconds, the crowd are going to go absolutely wild, and that's exactly what happened. So I feel like he was kind of feeding off the crowd, the energy of the crowd, and then I think he hit his top, and then maybe couldn't hold on, and then let go, and that's where he came back into the octagon and landed on his knee, because it didn't look like he was maybe bracing for that impact, and maybe his body wasn't like maybe his body kind of just let go of him in a way, and then he hit the ground, and that was it.
Nightmare, man.
Who knows? But I think like that's I think that just kind of like if you're a fan of the UFC, right, and you come into these fights, if you like Chase Hooper's age, for instance, and you're watching the UFC kind of go down, and you watch like these amazing knockouts, and then when the guy knocks him out, he jumps up onto the side of the cage and he does his roar like he's just like killed a man. And I think it's the adrenaline of knocking someone out along with the adrenaline of the crowd. You're kind of getting hit with both of them at the same time when you're sitting on the side of the octagon, and I think it can be enchanting.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe we need to find some sort of other way, or make it safer. Do you know what I mean? Like when someone wins, they just pop a little chair up there and some stairs, so they can just climb up nice and easy and just sit there.
Yeah, maybe minus the crying, but exactly how Brandon Moreno celebrated. He literally just got up and just went, and then started crying.
Yeah, that was unreal. It was unreal. And we'll get back to that in a bit, because that was obviously a fantastic performance. But next up, Min Hakim, who obviously couldn't offset his game plan early on. Evloev clearly was very, very dominant, and it's very unfortunate that two guys that are very up and coming have to fight each other at such an early point in their career. I feel like, when you have two fighters that are really trying to make names for themselves, why are we pitching them against each other so early on? Because then one of them has that trajectory and can go forward, whereas the other one kind of has to do a little bit more work to get the win back. But Evloev had a great performance, right? He was just all over him, very, very dominant. But tell me, what did you take away from it? And where do you think Evloev can go from here?
Man, it reminded me of Khabib, Islam Makhachev, all of those guys, man. Like it was very, very reminiscent of that. I don't think Hakeem would have just been able to do anything with those takedowns. It looked like Evloev he's just got that technique that he just doesn't put any power or effort in. He's just all technique, like Khabib, like Islam. He's just able to get these guys down, dominate, and just hold them in place. And I think he is going to be an absolutely massive problem for the rest of this featherweight division. Now, I know George picked Hakeem in his crush corner of this week, and for right reasons, man. Hakeem is a mean fighter. He comes in, he's very aggressive. He could see he was trying his best with what he could do. He was trying to be as mean as possible, especially in that third round. But man, Evloev is just He's just, the control is incredible, man. He's got a very bright future in this featherweight division against any of these guys. I think any of these guys are going to have trouble staving off the takedown, because I think he is just he's just that good at the technique, and I think he's just going to be able to get these guys down and control them in the worst kind of way. So I think he's got a very bright future. He isn't a looker, but he's definitely in crush corner for me.
Nah, I'm with you. And it seems like over the past year to 18 months, we've had so many more of these fighters that are just perfectly happy grinding to a 30-27. And they seem to get very good, kind of a very good fan base as well, even though they have that grinding kind of wrestle heavy kind of approach. Because I feel like back in the day, fighters really had to do something special to gain a fan base, and fighters had to have this massive highlight reel knockout kind of like section of their offering to the fans. Whereas nowadays it's more like, yeah, he's on like a 15 fight win streak, and he just grinded out decisions to all of them.
I think people enjoy when it's active. I think people hate when the guy just goes for the takedown. He like much of the end of the rounds against Israel Adesanya, right? Had Vettori just kind of in his takedown defense position against the cage. He wasn't able to get him down. He was just going to be hanging out there. And I think people hate when wrestlers are that way and that way inclined, especially in the fight, right? You got 15 minutes to win this fight, and your game plan is to just hold him against the fence like that. I think that is what irks a lot of fans. But when they're active with it, when they're taking down constantly, when they're passing guard, and they're actually doing something with it, I think that's where the fans enjoy it, and that's why the fans enjoyed Khabib so much. I think domination is enjoyable for people to watch, but I think domination where it's still technical, it's still something that people can watch and go, oh my god, like how is he able to do that? I think it's very simple to watch someone hold someone up against a cage, get that gable grip position right behind there, put your head directly in the middle of the crotch and hope for the best. And I think people hate that so much. And I agree as well. That's the worst kind of position to watch a fight play out over 15 minutes. But when you've got guys like this, it just makes it so much more entertaining. So I think he's got, I think he's got a bright future. I think he's going to be hanging out in those Khabib Islam territories where he's going to have that very much, that swell of Russian fans that are very much behind them. And they love their guys very much so. So if you watch their online presence as well, like you wouldn't think that these guys would be that popular, but they're massively popular in the regions that matter to them. So awesome for them as well. And I'm very much looking forward to when Russia opens up and they get a lot of these guys on that card. Like it's going to be a blockbuster wrestling event. It's going to be, you might as well just call it, when it was like UFC First Blood, UFC Bad Blood and stuff like that. It's going to be UFC WWE, where it's just going to see a lot of wrestling. But it's probably going to be, if you love domination, it's going to be the best event you'll ever see.
Yeah, and I can imagine it'll probably be a lot of ring time as well for these guys.
Oh yeah, I think the 3 title fights probably contributed to the amount of time the event was going on. And I think when they go to decisions, because sometimes when they have these 3 title fights, 1 or 2 of them don't tend to go to a decision. So I think them throwing in the Nate Leon fight just kind of was like, okay, here's another weird 5-rounder we're just going to chuck in here.
Yeah, here's another 25 minutes we're going to add to you not sleeping at 5 o'clock,
yeah, pretty
5
much.
o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, pretty much.
But obviously, we had a homegrown hero fighting out last night as well in Calderwood versus Murphy, and we obviously saw this as a title eliminator basically for who's going to fight for the belt next. What do you think of the performance, and do you think they're going to stand up against the Bullet?
Tough, man. It was a tough fight. It was a grinding fight from both sides. Split decision, one of the few split decisions on this card. But I've got to agree with them. I think Lauren Murphy did take this very, very slightly edged it, but I think she was just a little bit more dominant. And I don't think I just didn't feel the urgency from Calderwood in certain positions that you would see from, like when you watch these title fights, you just see like when they're on the ground, there's no like rest period. They're just going. And I think some of these guys get comfortable in these positions on their back in the guard, and they'll just sit there and wait and stuff like that. So Lauren Murphy's great, man. I think she is. I don't think she's got a chance against Valentina, but I don't give many people a chance against Valentina. I just think she is that damn good. But let's chuck her in there. I think she, if she can kind of grind it out and maybe tire out Valentina, let's get her against the fence and like let's really work her from there. Like that's got to be the game plan. Like what else can you do to stop Valentina Shevchenko? Like, are you going to trade head kicks with her? She's going to knock you out. You're going to grapple with her? She's going to take you down and choke you out. You want to strike with her with punches? She's going to probably knock you out with her fists as well. She is just the total package in that sense, man. So like you've got to look at these small holes, these maybe somewhat superficial holes to try and show a chink in the armor of someone that's just utterly undefeatable in the weirdest sense of the word. It's when I look at Nunes, there are things that you can see that some people can maybe take advantage of and things like that. But with Valentina, she's so technically sound. It's a masterclass, man. And I just don't think any of these guys, it's going to take a few years for them to really build someone up to that flyweight championship level. And look at Rose Namajunas in the strawweight division, right? It did take her a couple of fights to get to the point that she is now. She had to take that loss against Carla Esparza where she got choked out, and she had to take some of the losses in those key fights, but then came back better every single time. And I think when you look at the flyweight division, they're so new still that like, I don't think they've gone through their licks quite the same way as the strawweights have. And the strawweights were obviously around for a very long time in the Invicta and stuff like that as well. And I believe the flyweight division was there as well, but I think the history and the depth of the division is much more apparent in the strawweight division than it is in the flyweights. So Valentina's dominating for a long time. And by a long time, does that look like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? It's going to be very hard for them to get to a technical level where they're going to be able to compete with her. So it's going to take a while. And I'm interested to see, the only other one that I can really see making an impact at flyweight in the general, division as a whole is someone that's coming up to flyweight from strawweight, which is the wrestler, the tall wrestler. I forget her name. Oh my God, the tall wrestler. She's Mexican. Oh, not Mexican, but she's American. But she has Suarez, Tatiana Suarez.
Okay.
Tatiana Suarez. Yeah, Tatiana Suarez is obviously like a very dominant wrestler. But even then, like, is she just going to take her down and hold her down for 5 rounds to get a win? Does she actually do anything to hurt Valentina Shevchenko? I doubt it, man. I really do. So, yeah, man. Congratulations to Lauren Murphy. You're about to enter a death match.
And that's the thing, as we always say with the women's divisions, they are just a little bit further behind, and they're just not as... That's why you see that the top 15 is usually made up of people that you think, if these were more stacked divisions, they probably would have been cut by now, but they just keep them in there because there isn't that big enough pool of people and they're all going to fight each other probably once or twice in their career at least, because there's not a great amount of people in there, which is unfortunate. But fingers crossed over the next couple of years that they can really develop the 125ers and the 115s. Maybe even add the 105ers for the Asian market and obviously the more petite ladies, which I think would be a great idea. And then, obviously sacking off 145 because there's no one in it. There's no one in 145. We might as well get rid of that, have 105, 115, 125 and 135 and then go from there. And then I think it would be a little bit more consistent across the board.
I agree.
Yeah. So from 125 to 205 now, we're going to go straight over to Darren Stewart. Obviously went from 185 to 205 in his fight against Eric Anders, which was obviously a rematch after the illegal knee in their first bout. I thought Darren Stewart looked very good. He looked good. He looked loose. He looked a bit more, if anything, he looked a little bit more athletic at 205 than he does at 185. I felt like his hips were a little bit more open and he was going for that like lead kick and kind of bouncing around a little bit more in a Taekwondo style, but he still just didn't have enough to offer Eric Anders to catch the W here. And it really leaves the question to be, where does he go from here? Darren Stewart obviously made a bit of noise a couple of years ago when he was catching some great knockouts, but now it just seems that he's balding very, very badly. I don't know if you saw when he was up in the clinch position on the fence, he's a big bald patch. And it's one of them, we'll all get it at some point. Fingers crossed, not for a couple of years, but I just feel like I don't know where he goes. I really, really don't. Whether he leaves and goes to a different promotion, maybe Obviously, Bellator would be probably very good for him, but I'm not sure at 205 because there's some absolute murderers over in Bellator at 205, and they're just having a light heavyweight tournament.
Mm.
Where does he go from here? Where does Darren Stewart go? And Eric Anders in a very sort of similar position. I don't think he's ever going to be like, especially at 205. I feel like the guys at 205 that are born and bred there, like a true 205er, like Jan Blachowicz, I feel like he would completely destroy a person like Eric Anders. Although they might go in and they might weigh the same amount, I just think someone that is pure 205 and couldn't make 185 is always going to have that kind of athletic edge. But where does Darren Stewart go from here? And what do you think happens to Eric Anders, and who are we matching him up with next?
I almost just want to stick 2 pieces of bread between Darren Stewart's face and call him an idiot sandwich, but I won't. He did look good. I will say that. And I remember in the pre-fight, you were saying that he was working with someone in taekwondo or someone in karate that was helping. Yeah. That was very evident. That was super, very evident. 100%. His stance, the looseness of him, like that was super, super evident. And it was like he came out with like a completely different style than he did in the first fight, and much of his previous fights before that as well. So awesome. Maybe needs to work on it. Maybe needs to round out his skills a little bit using that style. That's the first time we've seen him use it to that full extent as well. So maybe it was a good time for him to try it out for the first time. And then as we go along here, maybe he can refine that a little bit more, add in some of those, those clinching positions and those grappling positions to help you secure the win if it's a points victory that you're after, kind of thing. So, I give him credit. He did look completely different from the first fight. I think he, adjusted, learned stuff. But Eric Anders is very crafty. Also, like, I think he used his clinching positions quite well. And it was kind of just a pretty standard back and forth fight. Not a whole lot you can really say, like nothing super technical, nothing like, they didn't do anything crazy. They would, obviously like Darren Stewart had the style that he had. I was expecting him to throw a lot more spinning kicks, if I'm honest, just because of the style, that stance and everything that he was kind of throwing on him there. So that was the only big surprise for me. And just kicks in general. Like I'd love to see him throw more like head kicks up top and stuff like that. But that, that will just be part of the style. And as he evolves here, I'm sure he will add those layers to his game, hopefully. Just make sure he aligns himself with the right bread maker, and we can then proceed on those steps to acquiring more bread for one. Exactly. That's exactly his MO, his game plan. Yeah. And the British people want to help you get that bread, my friend. So keep working at it, keep taking these fights. Do I see him getting cut from the UFC? Probably not. I think he is a quintessential, not journeyman fighter, but just someone to get matched up against someone else. Like, we need to fight light heavyweight, Darren Stewart. He's going to be that guy for the rest of his career. And I hate to say that because I just don't see him getting into that top of the division, especially at light heavyweight. As you mentioned, like Johnny Walker's going to give him fits. Jan Blachowicz is going to give him fits. Like these are all people that are going to just terrorize him on the feet and on the ground. So, Prochaska is going to, Prochaska is just, in a league of his own right now. Yeah. I cannot wait to see this guy fight for their title, but it's going to be tough for Darren Stewart. And I want to be led to believe that Eric Anders only took this fight at light heavyweight because Darren Stewart wanted this fight at light heavyweight. I imagine he goes back to middleweight. He was making it like, it was tough, but he was still making the 185, 186 limit. So I think Eric Anders will probably go back down to middleweight, but just a solid win, gets to right the ship of the no contest illegal knee as well. Like, I think maybe he didn't need to take this fight. It doesn't add anything to his career or his trajectory. Same for Darren Stewart, really, at the end of the day. But, I think these guys wanted to run it back because of the way it ended. And, I think Darren Stewart was the one who was like, okay, well, I want to do it at light heavyweight. So, I think someone like Eric Anders is like, sweet, I get to put on 20 more pounds. I don't have to train as hard to get the weight down. So it's a win for him. And then he gets into the fight and has a win there as well. So congratulations to Eric Anders. Very, very smartly played.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. It's like you say, I don't see either of these guys making the top of their divisions. I feel like they're not too
With all
old
due
now.
respect.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. With all due respect, some
Always,
people they get to a
always.
certain age and then they, you think, you're going to have to work really, really hard to break into the top 5 realms here, because for Darren Stewart, for instance, if he stays at 205 and he gets matched up with Reyes, is he going to take it? Is he going to take a W there? Maybe not. Anthony Smith, it's like, where does he go? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of killers at 205, and will he sit on the fringe of the rank 15? Maybe. Does he make the rankings? I don't think he's been ranked at all at middleweight. So it's like, it's very unfortunate for a UK homegrown fighter to not make those kind of movements that you really want them to. But it is what it is. Apparently, he went into this with a fantastic mindset. He'd changed his outlook on these things as well from where he was doing his work, obviously, at the quick recovery unit. And it was like, yeah, he doesn't know what. I don't think he'll know what else to do here. I think this will be a big hit to him mentally as to what he's going to do and how he's going to proceed with his career. But nevertheless, there was a fight on this card that you were very, very much looking forward to, and it's the one we're going to speak about now. Drew Dober, Mr. America, he looks like. He looks like he was chiseled by a Greek god. I feel like he's got a very, very defined jaw. It's like the most
defined jaw of all time. Like,
ever.
What the hell? Ever.
If you Google super defined jaw, it comes up with a picture of Drew Dober that's just like, yes. I mean, I've actually got a very defined jaw. It's underneath this giant, thick ginger beard here. I'm lying to you. I really am. We've both got Drew Dober jaws, but they're just hidden under beards, man. That's what it is. If he had
just trying to make it fair to everybody else,
Exactly. We can't have all of the chins in the world and all of the jaw lines. Exactly. It just doesn't work like that. It would be unfair that they were all on one podcast. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But you were obviously pretty hot on Brad Riddell as well, and it was a great performance from him.
Both of them.
Both of them. Yeah. It was a fantastic performance from these two gentlemen going out there. Obviously, it did finish with a decision. But what did you think of the performance?
It was a tough fight, man. Both guys swinging for the fences from start to finish, hurting each other from start to finish as well. Like, what a fight. Rightly called as the fight of the night. We all knew it was going to be the fight of the night going into this event, and it delivered, man. Like, I'm actually like, and like just the way, just zoom into Brad Riddell's mind right now, having to deal with everything that he's had to deal with Falvake as well. Like, I can only imagine how these guys got through that training camp. Sorry. I assume they're about to have a gigantic emotional release now, having the fight in the rear view mirror now. Man, Brad Riddell is tough as nails, and I you can say that about every fighter in the UFC, but these two gentlemen just like they will not go down. They will not be stopped. And look at Drew Dober against Islam Makhachev. He did not quit in there for 1 second. And you can see that against Brad Riddell as well. Like, did not quit in there. I'm very happy to say that Brad Riddell will probably have a number next to his name now, rightly deserved, because that was a tough performance where he was just able to make the correct decisions in these stand-up exchanges. And Drew Dober as well, just like he had his moments in the fight as well. And you can tell it was a 29-28. It was a close fight. I would say, I think I gave Brad Riddell the first round, Drew Dober the second round, and then Brad Riddell the third round. So agree with the judges on this one. But man, what a tough fight. I think everyone at the lightweight division is going to struggle with these two gentlemen. And I think it's purely because you're going to get into a war. You're going to get into a slugfest, and you're not going to be able to. I mean, I'm finding it hard to articulate because it was just so good, man. I think both gentlemen as well, like, are going to have such bright futures in the next year or two. I think they're going to get into some amazing fights. And I think if these guys could continue on the trajectory that they're on now, they're going to be champions, or at least Brad Riddell will probably be a champion at lightweight within the next 2 years. I don't know his age. I want to say he's probably in his he's 29, so he's about to, start hitting his prime and stuff. Mm-hmm. He hasn't had a lot of stoppage wins, and I think that's something that's going to be tough for the fans to fully get on board with him. But I think just look at the fights he's having, man. Like this fight, the Jamie Malarkey fight. Like, he's had some absolute killer fights here, and he's going to continue as he goes along here. And he said it perfectly in the post fight, right? He got on the mic with Joe Rogan. He's like, God, another crazy fight. And I think this is just what you're going to expect from Brad Riddell. He's tough as nails. He can absorb a hell of a lot of damage. He comes firing back with his own great combinations, you know, 2-3 punch combinations as well. You normally see just, you know, I hit you once and then I'm going to back away, and then you hit me once and then I'll back away. Like, you don't see it with these level of fights. They're throwing 3 or 4 combinations at the same time, and it's so awesome to see, because it's technical, and I think people just love the technicality of it, but also just the sheer violence of it. And that's why the crowd were going absolutely crazy during this fight, especially in that third round where they were exchanging heavy at the, you know, kind of like the middle part of the third round. They were exchanging insanely heavy shots, and the crowd were going absolutely wild. And I think it was probably like motivating these guys even further in the octagon to perform even better and to take those shots and keep going back and forth. Man, what an awesome fight, man. I would happily watch that fight 10 times over and twice on a Sunday.
Yeah. And we said this in the pre-fight as well, that the crowd being there and it being quite a large crowd in Arizona was going to make a massive difference. And it was very, very evident throughout that bout that the crowd were very, very invested in what was happening. And it's great when the two gladiators, as we describe them as well, the two gladiators go out there, they put on a great performance for the crowd, for the fans sitting at home, for the people around the world that are obviously staying up very, very late to watch these gentlemen fight. And it's everything that you would imagine and that you would want from mixed martial arts, isn't it? It really is.
It satisfied the Just Bleed fan. It satisfied the technical fan. It satisfied the violence fan. Like, it literally ticked, you know, apart from having a finish, it literally ticked every other box that you would want in your quintessential fight. Like, that's a fight that I would happily show a casual friend of mine who doesn't know much about MMA and go, watch this fight. This is crazy.
Yeah. And then if you didn't have the shock or factor in that fight, you certainly had it in the next one with Paul Craig versus Jamal Hill. Mamma mia. What a crazy turn of events that was. I was surprised that Mark Smith wasn't the referee. I don't know who the referee was. It was a
I think it was Herzog.
Was it Herzog?
Oh no, it was no. It was like a local referee who looked, correct me if I'm wrong, he looked a bit like Yves Levine. I don't know if you remember the old referee, but he looked very much like him. But I think his name was like Al Guiney or something like that.
Yeah, it looked like an old man that would mother a pint on a Sunday and read the newspaper. It was like, are you sure you're supposed to be here? Like,
it's Popeye in his current age.
Yeah, you've got them refs that come in like Mike Beltran and, you know, Mark Goddard and stuff like that. He's honestly one of my favorite refs, purely because obviously he had his mad mustache, but he's just a unit, man. Such a unit. Mark Goddard, obviously a BJJ practitioner himself. And, you know, Herzog is obviously an absolute legend as well. But I don't know who this ref was, but was it a strange stoppage? Yes. Should he have stopped it when he noticed that Hill's arm was like flopping around like a dead fish, as Paul Craig said it? And, you know, if any of the American fans didn't know what he was saying, he actually said his arm was flopping around like a dead fish, because I feel like he needed subtitles for quite a lot of the crowd there. He's Scottish, and American people struggle with the Scottish accent. It is just one of those things. But I thought it was absolutely fantastic. He was chasing the finish from start to finish, funnily enough. And obviously he was latched onto the right arm, twisting that into, like, I hadn't seen these kind of attacks before. Obviously we know the Kimura, we know these different kind of arm bars or whatever, but this was kind of, I'm going to kick my legs up, twist your arm until it just hurts. Do you know what I mean? It didn't look like it was an actual chasing a submission. It looked like he was just chasing, I don't know, like you're fighting with your brother or something, and he puts his arm under your armpit and you're like, cool, I'm just going to twist this.
Yeah. Like, almost like, you know how they put the feet on them to start like threatening the up kick, but he just like kind of trapped him quickly and then just kind of twisted it, manipulated it in the weirdest way. I wouldn't call it an arm bar, but I guess it's kind of like an arm bar because he was manipulating the arm. but doing it with his legs and his hips and his thighs and things like that. It was
Crazy.
weird as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
one of the
obviously,
weirder ones I've seen.
yeah, exactly. I thought it was pretty strong. I watched it quite a few times, but he obviously had the right arm, and then he quickly like fainted over, grabbed the left arm, twisted it up, twisted it round.
Yeah.
Clearly, very, very clearly dislocated the top part of his arm from the bottom part of his arm. It was that his elbow. Yeah. Is it radius and ulna? I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. He obviously popped those out, which is going to cause a mountain of damage, as Paul Felder quite rightly said in the commentary booth last night. It was insane, you know. And Paul Craig even looked at the ref and said, "Look, I really don't want to continue here because he's got a broken arm. I don't really know what to do." But one of the weirdest things I saw was when Hill pulled his arm away. Obviously, when he'd lost the fight, it just dragged along and just went boom, just like he dragged it over Paul Craig's crotch. And then it just fell on the floor. It was just the most comedic thing to see. And he just kind of sat there and was like, well, what do I do now? His arm, he didn't want to lift his arm or anything. He kind of just was looking at this arm as if it was like a third party attached to his body that just was just sat between his legs. Like, is this still my arm, or is it not my arm anymore because it's not attached? But
yeah, I don't know if you could tell, guys, but Connor's a bit of a sicko.
Yeah, when Weidman broke his leg, I loved it, but you know, an arm break is even better for me. I love that. I really, really do. It was just glorious. I don't know if it was a dislocation or whether he actually broke something. I'm going to have to check it out on. I mean, you've got a computer.
Dana White was saying afterwards it was a dislocation. He was like he was amazed that it wasn't broken. I was amazed it wasn't broken, to be fair. But yeah, went to the hospital, had it all x-rayed and stuff, and it was just dislocated. They just popped it back in the arm, and then he was good to go.
That's it. Unlike Jacare Souza the other week, who very, very clearly snapped his entire arm. And it's just part of the game. It's just part of the game. Fantastic.
You say that you just say that with such enthusiasm. Oh,
I don't get enthusiastic about a lot of things, but those kind of things I do, genuinely.
Yeah.
It's good that it was only a dislocation because, as we know, when we've seen, shoulders pop out and stuff, it's just kind of pull it down, up and twist, and you can pop it back in. And a nose break, you can just pop it back over. But that's great that it wasn't broken because it obviously gives him the opportunity to get back in there. But where do we go with the Bear Jew that is Paul Craig now? Because he's on a fantastic run. He's doing really, really well. And in the weigh-ins, it doesn't look like he has to cut a lot of weight to get in there. He looked very, very athletic. He's got a fantastic physique.
Yeah, very lean, right?
Very, very lean, tall, got that long kind of torso, fantastic on the ground. And he's really been working on his striking as well. Obviously, he pulled guard as well, which you don't see a lot of fighters doing, especially in mixed martial arts, because it is so dangerous. It's not just you're not in gis trying to wrap each other up. It's literally you could pull guard, and then all of a sudden you've got elbows flying from space. But where does Paul Craig go from here? Do we match him up with Darren Stewart, or where do we go? Where do we go from here? He's on a fantastic run.
I don't think they've got very good bread in Scotland, so I don't know if Darren Stewart will on any of that business. So, God, who do we put him up against? I've got the rankings right in front of me now. Yeah. It's gonna be tough to say. The other thing as well, like we obviously covered the finish and everything that was kind of with that. Amazing float overs. I don't know if you know what the float over is, but as he is kind of like belly down, he was able to just float him over and get that top position. So he did it like 2 or 3 times, and it was just beautiful to watch. So shout outs to Paul Craig for that one. Very tough to do in a jiu-jitsu scenario. So to do it in MMA is tough work. So
he's
big ratings for that.
He's got a lot of fluidity when he's working the ground.
Which you wouldn't expect out of a massive guy like him, but he moves beautifully, man. But you look at like Nogueira, for instance, back in the day, he was just so smooth on the ground, man. It was so crazy. But who does he fight next, man? I think he's fought quite a lot of these guys already. They're like a Johnny Walker at 10. Paul Craig is currently sitting at number 14. I guess
this changed this week.
Jamal Hill is 15, so I don't know how much of that would really massively change. Maybe a position or two up.
Yeah.
If you really want to elevate him up the rankings, you could match him up against like a Volkan Ozdemir.
Mhm.
Volkan Ozdemir is number 8 at the moment. That would be a great fight. I think a fight with like someone like Nikita Krylov might be quite good because Nikita Krylov is number 9, and they've both got very interesting and very contrasting jiu-jitsu styles. So
Yeah.
I think that would be quite interesting as well. Um,
Anthony Smith, where's
I
he?
don't,
6,
and
7?
Anthony Smith is number 6 at the moment, and
Yeah.
if Anthony Smith wants to maybe go on with, I like the idea of Anthony Smith not fighting like number 1, number 2, number 3 in the rankings. I like him maybe fighting down a little bit, maybe a couple of times just to get his confidence back up as well. 14 versus 6 isn't something that's you really want to see too much of, but sometimes these guys need to make these jumps and have these chances to be taken, so we can really see where he stands in the division. He looks like he's moving at his ultimate kind of I felt like his flow was very, very good in the octagon as well. You want to capitalize on that as much as possible. He didn't really take any
Exactly.
damage in that fight either, so let's get him in there with someone that's able to take a fight with him.
Yeah.
Anthony Smith would be a great shout. Ryan Spann, there's great fights for him to have at this division. But I think it's only in like maybe the last year or so that the light heavyweight division has really started to gain some momentum. So I'm really, it's typically obviously because of John Jones and his dominance, it's not been one of the divisions that's people have really cared about over the years because you've only got him, DC, and Alec and Gustafson. Those are like the 3 guys, and Rumble Johnson, if you will, are like the 4 guys at light heavyweight that really people were really excited to watch fight. But now you've got so many guys now: Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, Alexander Rakic, Jiri Prochaska,
Yeah.
Anthony Smith, Magomed Ankalaev, like Johnny Walker. Like there's great people at light heavyweight now. So interesting fights for Paul Craig to have. I think he's going to struggle with some of those big dudes who can strike very, very well. But I think Jamal Hill was someone that could strike very, very well. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Bear due, hey. And let's give him a tough fight, like a Volkan Ozdemir or an Anthony Smith. I agree with that. I think that'd be a great step up in competition for him.
Yeah, I like it. And, a 14 that's on a very, very good run, fighting someone at 6 or 7 or 8 is very, very realistic. We obviously saw Belal Muhammad fight Leon Edwards, which was a big jump for him. Obviously, it was a last-minute replacement, but that was a very, very big jump. And then we've just seen Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, which is a massive jump as well. Obviously, it's a different kind of angle and it attracts a different kind of fan, that kind of fight. But I feel like, as we always talk about, the ranking system is very, very miffed anyway. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it is what it is, but I feel like he's on a very good run. And considering that he wasn't on a run at all a couple of years ago and he was just kind of like a bit of a nobody, now he's really making some noise. And to be on that card and to be quite high up on that card, to opening the main card as well on such a big numbered card with some great names on it, I think it's going to be fantastic for his career and his trajectory as well. But next up, a fight that we can quickly brush over. Damian Maia fought Belal Muhammad. Belal Muhammad won. Damian Maia is old and will probably retire soon. Good. Quickly moving on to the next fight.
Hey man, quick one on Damian Maia. Damian Maia is probably one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Yeah,
from my background and stuff like that. He's one of the greatest. Credit where it's due to Belal Muhammad, able to get cruise to quite an easy victory there. I got to say, Damian looked like he was a step behind massively. He's 44 years old. No surprise that he is behind a step of someone who's in their like 30s in their prime. So love to see Damian Maia retire. What a legend of the game. He will forever go down as one of the greatest jiu-jitsu fighters in the UFC, alongside the incredible Royce Gracie and Jacare Souza. I would say those are 3 of the top jiu-jitsu fighters in the UFC ever. And I'll be interested to see him teaching other people his amazing techniques for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is sad when someone is in your own personal Hall of Fame and you see them get to a certain point in their career where they're not as quick as they used to be. Very, very much like Anderson Silva, who in his last couple of fights was
Dominic Cruz,
exactly. And Anderson Silva was still trying to do the stuff that he was doing when he was kind of like mid 30s. And now it's like your early 40s, mate. please stop doing this crazy head movement, because your head just doesn't have the same movement that it used to. You know, it's very unfortunate that the fighters let it go on so long. And obviously, last week we were speaking about Alistair Overeem, obviously fighting again as well. And it's like, you know, some of these guys have got such a die-hard love for the game that you think, I respect what you're doing and I respect the grind, but
you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, let's get out of this while we can. Do you know what I mean? And then even they float over to BKB or something like this, and you think, come on, please just stop fighting. Just stop fighting in general. Do you know what I mean? You know, go and train someone, become a coach, become a judge, become a ref. I don't know, do something else around the sport that is not physically getting in there and getting your head kicked. And it's just one of them things. It really, really is. But the next fight on the card obviously was a 5-rounder. We had Leon Rocky Edwards, homegrown hero from Birmingham, fighting Nate Diaz out stopped at 209. And it was a war between these two gentlemen. It really, really was. I thought it was a fantastic fight. It played out very, very much the way that we thought it would, obviously with the exception of a stoppage, because we thought there was going to be a stoppage, but we had the full 5 rounds here. And Nate Diaz has got one of the best chins in the game. That man could take an absolute lick from someone like Leon Edwards, who has got fantastic hands, fantastic cardio, fantastic elbows off the break as well. And great ground and pound, as we saw yesterday. Leon managed to get a fantastic elbow over the top left of Nate Diaz's eye, and it was just glorious. Cut him up. He got a cut on the side of his head as well. As we always say, we know and we can expect blood when we have a Nate Diaz fight, and it's nothing new to him. It's nothing new. You know, we knew this man would get cut up, but in the 5th round, wow, the world was on their feet, as was the entire stadium. It was crazy. I watched it a few times, and then I was like, how? It was a classic Stockton slap, followed by a crisp, on the money, straight cross. It was glorious. Leon Edwards was completely out on his feet. But what did you take?
Recovered very well. Very well. I will say,
lots of movement.
And you know, Nate's not typically one of those guys that when he knows he's hurt someone, he doesn't sit back. Maybe he did the point the finger thing that he does whenever he hurts someone, but like and you could see for the rest of that, for the rest of that 30 seconds, he was on it, ready to finish him. But credit to Leon Edwards, had just about enough wherewithal to just get himself scooted around the octagon and run out that clock until he could secure his own victory. So perfect fight for Leon. Leon Edwards was about to get, the Overeem Rosenstrike treatment and lose the fight at the last second. But, hung in there. Credit to Nate Diaz. What an amazing chin on this guy. I mean, that's understated. We all know that Nate Diaz can take a hell of a lot of punishment. Do I want to constantly see Nate Diaz take a hell of a lot of punishment? I don't. I love Nate Diaz, and I think he's a great fighter. But I think, what has he really got to prove, unless he's making an absolute hell of a lot of money and that's all of his motivation, which I assume that is pretty much his sole motivation at this point. He doesn't strike me as like a huge title fight kind of guy. I think maybe take the title just because of the money that you get with it as well, more so than the title and being, the champion, the welterweight champion or the lightweight champion or anything like that. I think that's kind of Nate's biggest motivation. So I think he's only going to take these big fights. I think he took this fight knowing that his next fight, if he won that, would have been a welterweight title fight where he could have made a lot of money off the pay-per-view and things like that. So, but I think Nate Diaz is only going to be in big fights from now on. So again, we probably won't see him for like another year or so, which sucks. But I'd love to see him get in there soon against someone else who's a big name. If Conor loses to Dustin Poirier, that fight is always there. And I think that's, an amazing trilogy that people still want to see as well. People still go on about seeing Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 3. And it's because of how good the first 2 fights were. I agree. But I think it's also because people just want to see Nate Diaz fight, and people just want to see Conor McGregor fight more so than anything else. So I'm hoping he gets back in there. If he does, sooner rather than later, against someone maybe not ranked 3 in the world when you're unranked. Sorry, maybe not the 3rd ranked guy, maybe someone a little bit lower. But I think he'll only get those big fights now. He actually even mentioned potentially taking a fight against Damian Maia if they could get that sorted. Like, obviously, I don't want to see Damian Maia fight again, and I'm good with that. But like, I think Nate Diaz would just kind of turn it into an actual grappling match because I think he respects Damian Maia as well. So I think he would like legitimately just go in there and they'd both just like, okay, let's figure out who's getting top guard, and then they'll go from there. And have like probably end up having the most amazing jiu-jitsu fight in the world, but I don't think he's got much of a chance against any of these big names at the moment. That's all he's going to be fighting because of his name now. He's only going to be fighting big fights now, so it'll be interesting to see who they book him up against. Like, I was actually blown away that he took a fight with Leon Edwards, like beyond blown away that he took a fight with Leon Edwards. And I think the other cool thing I love about mixed martial arts, which is what we're going to talk about, especially in the next fight along in the card, but just like the respect. Like, it's so awesome to see Nate. You've done well when Nate can like fist bump you in the octagon. When you hit a good shot on Nate Diaz and he fist bumps you in the octagon, like, respect. Because, I love to see the respect of someone like Nate Diaz, who, pre-fight says what he says because he wants to just obviously like make it look like he's angry against the person or he hates them or whatever it is. Yeah. But after the fight, it's always the same Nate Diaz you see, which is respect. He gives him his due. He gives him his his props and says, great fight, and you did everything you needed to do. Made a couple of excuses. Let's just say it how it is. Oh, I got cut in training like a month ago, and so therefore I couldn't fight properly and train properly and things like, or I lost my motivation, I think was what he was saying in between him getting cut and stuff. Like, I'm hoping that isn't the way, but if that is what happened, then he definitely shouldn't be fighting in mixed martial arts against someone who's coming forward to kill him. Like, if that's, you're losing your motivation a month before the fight because of a cut, which happens because you've got a hell of a lot of scar tissue, my guy. Then this isn't the right sport for him. But I still love him. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. Big ups to Leon Edwards. We love our British fighters. Excited to see him get into 10 fights in a row, man. They cannot deny this man any further. Unless your name is Dana White, then you'll deny him and give your title shot to Colby Covington instead. But he deserves it. We all know it. Dana White even knows it. He's just not going to give it to him because he's not finishing every single fight that he's in. But I don't think neither is Colby Covington. So
it is what it is. And he will, Leon Edwards is 29.
Yeah, man.
He's 29 years old. So crazy. I think if he doesn't get his title shot now, then he'll get it next time. Do you know what I mean? This guy's on such a fantastic run and he's beaten some great fighters. And I feel like if we could get him on some sort of roll now, because he's had a lot of time out with injuries, with COVID, etc. If we could get him on a nice little roll where we're seeing him a little bit more frequently. I mean, if he was to fight the winner of Burns versus Wonderboy, I think, I wouldn't be against that. I think that would be a good fight for him to and then get on to obviously challenging for the belt should he make his way through that.
The other fight that's floating out there for him, which is the fight that everybody would love to see, 3 pieces and a soda. Let's finish the fight with Masvidal. Let's get him in there with Masvidal. And I think that might be give him a good chance as well to potentially finish a fight. Susceptible Masvidal now is against, when he fought Usman. I think Usman kind of exposed a lot about Masvidal as well in terms of his stand-up and things like that. Usman's not typically someone that strikes on the level of some of these guys. So for him to be able to gain the skills, but also expose a few holes in Masvidal's game, maybe that's where Leon Edwards can just kind of slip in and potentially pick himself up a little TKO on the way as well.
But what does that do for his stock? Leon Edwards obviously fought Bilal Muhammad, who did nothing for him. He fought Nate Diaz, who did nothing for him with regards to how he's moving forward in his career and his trajectory. He would have to fight someone that was at least on his level now. Masvidal's coming off of a loss. He's coming off of a couple of losses and a couple of fights. And it's like...
But Masvidal's the same thing as Diaz, though. Masvidal's now gotten to that same level now where he's a fan favorite. He's people will buy a pay-per-view for. And I think if he can go out there and finish George Masvidal, that would just cement him right at the top there. But I think, he could go in and dominate, you know, Gilbert Burns or a Stephen Thompson and still get the title shot as well. But it's almost sad in a way that they've matched Wonder Boy up against Gilbert Burns, because that would have been either one of those guys against Leon Edwards would be the perfect number one contender fight. But now they've got a fight. They're going to take some time out afterwards. And then you've got time now for Leon Edwards to now sit back. We're looking at like October, November, December, and the time will roll on. So, you know, maybe Usman fighting another guy isn't, you know, maybe Usman fighting a Colby Covington isn't as bad as you would think, because of the amount of time he would have to wait anyway for one of these other guys to win the fight, and then to then go and have that number one contender fight against Leon Edwards.
Yeah,
his name just slipped out of my mind.
Yeah. You know, and in such a stacked division, the top 5, top 6 are always going to be kind of, you know, constantly chewing at each other to get in there anyway, and to get in there for the belt. 100%. And Kamaru Usman being such a dominant champion and really putting people away the last couple of fights out has made it very difficult for Dana White and the matchmakers, you know, to put anyone in there with him, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough night at the office. It really, really is. And moving swiftly on, Viva la Mexico. Wow. What a performance from Brandon Moreno. I didn't realize he was 27 and he's got 3 children. Fair play. This man, and if that was his life in the octagon, he is winning at life. Left, right, and center here. This man is on the top of his game right now. He looked fantastic last night. He looked so good. And when he was talking to Joe Rogan afterwards, he said, I have been practicing and I have been training for the past 6 months to have this one fight. And he looked so sharp. His transitions on the ground were fantastic. His hands looked fantastic. He'd clearly gone away and just worked himself to the bone to come back and to get what he deserved and what he needed in that fight. And fair play to Deiveson Figueiredo, who said afterwards, it's his time now. There was so much respect there as well. But Moreno looked amazing last night, man. And he managed to sink in a fantastic rear naked choke. Where does he go from here? Obviously, the 125ers are starting to make a little bit of a resurgence. What do we see? What do we see next? What do we see next for this gentleman? And who makes noise in the 125 division? Or do we see a trilogy?
I assume we see a trilogy. I assume we will see a trilogy, because I think it's fresh in people's mind. And so if they can just give him a couple of months, you know, neither guy took a huge amount of damage. Obviously, Deiveson got dropped once or twice. I think Deiveson Figueiredo is way too big for this division. He looks like he struggles to hell to get down to 125. You know, making it to the scales with like 1 minute to spare, and he looked like a ghost. Barely could stand on the scale. So, like, is this time for Deiveson Figueiredo to go up to 135 and make a run there? Potentially. And if that's the case, then the next one up, I would say, is George's favorite flyweight, which is Askar Askarov, number 2 in the division, and, you know, coming off of a dominant win himself. So, it'd be silly not to put someone like him. There's no one else that really stands out for me in the flyweight division. You know, any other names that are big enough, you know, unless they chuck him in there with Joseph Benavidez, which I you know, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't I wouldn't want him to fight there. The only other people that are really hanging out in that top 5 of the division that makes sense is, you know, Askar Askarov, Deiveson Figueiredo, maybe Alex Perez. Maybe, but Alex Perez got kind of dominated by
Munoz.
Deiveson Figueiredo? Munoz? No, who was?
Rivera?
Perez. No, Perez. Alex Perez fought in a title fight against Figueiredo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he got dominated in that fight as well. So
I just started listing off names, man.
So in that sense, the only 2 that make real massive sense for him is Deiveson Figueiredo or Askar Askarov. But I think Deiveson does move up, to be honest. He just looked so bad. I don't think he would want to go through that again, unless he was fighting for the title. So that's the only thing where I can see is maybe a reason to keep him behind. But I think his days at 25 are numbered, to be honest, because of the weight.
Bless you. And we were obviously talking about ring celebrations and how people take it all in. And obviously, this young man had such a massive wave of emotion, and it was, I've seen slow motions of this, I've seen different angles of this, and it is so powerful and so captivating. The fact that he was,
I got emotional, man. I'm getting
yeah,
emotional. It's like thinking
literally,
about it and like what it means. Like the way he folded over and started crying and everything
yeah,
is just like, what a beautiful moment.
yeah. And he kind of got up and he looked like it was like a post apocalyptic scene. And he was just like, I don't know what's happened. I'm just going to walk around for a little bit and see what's going on. And then I think it really hit him that he'd just won the UFC title, and it was such a beautiful moment. I don't get very emotional about a lot of things, as you can probably tell, but I was with him in there, man. I was like, wow, this is touching. Do you know what I mean? This really, really is, because it just means so much to him. I'm not sure how Dana White felt with him winning, because I feel like when Dana White puts the belt over the shoulder, it's like I'm a bit annoyed that you've won. When he does it round the waist, and he kind of does it up for them, and he's a little bit more excited about it. I think I don't know. I don't know if that's just me subconsciously seeing what he's doing and taking away from his kind of language.
I think he's too skinny to have the belt put around him, so he just fall down to his. I think it is. I think that's what the problem is, and that's why you often see him do that with the strawweight and the flyweight titles. He'll often put it on their shoulder as opposed to putting it around their waist. I think it's because they're too skinny.
Nah, if I'm never going to make 125 unless I die. But if they do not put the belt around my waist, as to say, like, right, because that's where it goes, man. It's a freaking belt, Put it around your
ceremonial, man.
Yeah. I would want them to flick it around and get some more notches. Like, it's literally notched at the back. Put some more in, man. Come on, what is this? You can afford these nice belts. Do them in more than one size.
And exactly, and you know that you got flyweights fighting this weekend. Like, I get the extra small belts out.
Exactly. That's annoyed me even knowing that. But anyway, I felt like Dana White didn't look very invested in him winning, because he obviously made it into the UFC. He got cut. He came back. I felt like he just came out of nowhere, Brandon Moreno. He kind of like had 3 or 4 fights and then was like, boom, look at me now. I'm doing some mad stuff over here,
Yeah, man. He was previously on the Ultimate Fighter as well. That season that, they were all champions, and then they all fought against each other to then eventually get a fight with Demetrius Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of that season. He got let go from that season a little bit early so he could make his debut into the UFC, and choked out like Luis Smolka, so like someone like really highly rated in the flyweight division at that time. So he's been there, man. He's a former training partner of Henry Cejudo, right? So he's been trained or training with absolute killers. And he's always been good, man. He's always been very durable. He's always had great hands. He's always had great submissions. I don't think we've ever seen him put it together quite that way, where it's so dominating. And he was able to, man, he just didn't really give Davison room to do anything, man. Davison looked like he wanted to throw a lot of shots. Davison looked very, very flat. Again, I think that is due to the weight cut. I think the weight cut just was so bad for him this time around. And he just couldn't recover enough. He wasn't hydrated enough within that time between the fight and stuff like that. So, I think Brandon Moreno he's gonna do good here in this division. I think he's going to be someone that's going to give a lot of trouble to these guys. But I do see him as being one of the more beatable champions in the grand scheme of the UFC.
Yeah.
Someone like Askar Askarov, he's 27 years old, and someone like Askar Askarov, who is very, very dominating on the ground, take him down, hold him down, control him. Like, that's someone that I can see susceptible over 5 rounds for Brandon Moreno to maybe lose his title. But at the same time, just like, if you're going to take a moment and capture it in a bottle, like that is the moment that every single fighter that wants to get into the UFC and have their moment, that is exactly what it should look like. And that's often what it looks like when those guys when they win the title, they rise to the occasion and win the title from the champion. Like, that's kind of the emotion that you see. But his was different. He was very stoic with it, because I think he was kind of trying to process it as it was going along. And he's very young as well. He's 27 years old. So maybe he was also just kind of like what the hell is going on right now? I have no idea what's going on. And then when it all hits him, it's such, that's one of the more beautiful moments in mixed martial arts that you're going to see in general. Like I love watching a lot of the respect stuff, you know, when Davis, you know, after the fight was done and Moreno had dropped down to his knees, Figueiredo came over and picked him up and hugged him and said congratulations and all that. That's one side of MMA that I really, really love, the respect. But just watching someone achieve their dreams like that, I think for me, that is everything about the UFC that I love. And incredible moment with the crowd there as well. I think if that happened in the Apex, like it just would not have had nearly the impact that it has, and it will continue to have as it goes along here, and is remembered as one of the more wholesome, feel-good moments in the UFC, especially in the year, you know, in the last year and 2 years that have just been so shit, man, so awful, so, you know, just sad times. Just to watch something like that go down, I think it's just one of those times where you just realize like anything is possible, man. Anything you put your mind to, you can do. Brandon Moreno is the embodiment of that, right? He was in the UFC, he got cut from the UFC, he came back into the UFC, won a couple of fights, and now he's the champ, and he looks as good as he ever did. Like anything is possible when you just really apply yourself, and that is exactly what Brandon Moreno has done, and he has become the UFC flyweight champion. Viva Mexico, cabrones!
Let's go. No, it was a beautiful moment, man, and being obviously Mexico's first ever champion, which is fantastic. It's a real achievement in itself, considering the organization is obviously 31 years old, I believe now, or 30, 31, I think it is now.
Yeah. I mean, you've got people like Kane and stuff like that have fought over the years, but like this is the first time you've got someone that was born and bred in Mexico,
yes,
and is raised in Mexico as well. Like, congratulations to Mexico, man. He's going to be a star, and he's got such a lovable personality. He's a little nerd. Like is it like I loved watching him interact with Israel Adesanya because they're both little nerds at the end of the day. Like, strip everything away. They do collectibles and they have their fun little interactions with each other. So like, he's going to be super massive because he's such a lovable personality as well. So Mexico is going to have a cool guy on their hands here.
Definitely. And he's obviously on the analyst panel for obviously the Spanish speaking viewers as well. So he's
commentary, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the commentary. Yeah. And he does the analyst stuff as well, that's awesome, man. We obviously don't even get to see that or get to know about it because we're watching it in a different language. So the fact that he is doing that for such a, you know, I think Spanish speakers are like the second most in the world, right? Or third most in the world. So he's obviously got a humongous fan base and will generate a humongous fan base because everything he's achieving and everything he's doing, man. It's glorious.
When he won as well, he acknowledged his fellow commentator, kind of like when DC knocked out Stipe and he went over and kind of put his hands up in front of John Anik, like the same kind of thing. So that was awesome to see as well.
Yeah, man, it was nice. And then a little bit
moment.
And then obviously we had the main event was a little bit sideways. We didn't see it going down as it did. Obviously, a lot of people.
So didn't Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, clearly the guy didn't know what was going on. There was obviously a lot of beef between these guys before they fought. They obviously didn't touch gloves. There was quite a bit of animosity between these two gentlemen, and Marvin Vettori thinking that he won at the end, you know, doing the little half arm thing was just baffling. I don't know what fight he thought he was in and what fight he thought he was going to win. But to be honest with you, for a main event and to have someone like Israel Adesanya in it, I thought it was a very, very flat fight to watch, especially for 25 minutes. I kind of, I watched it this morning and I was just skipping through, just skipping and skipping and skipping because not a great amount happened. It was Vettori trying to go for a very, very labored takedown, fantastic takedown defense from Israel Adesanya. Adesanya not really doing a great amount. I didn't feel like he was putting on a lot of work either. He's obviously he's very good moving backwards and a very good counter fighter, but I didn't feel like he was, I don't know. It was just a bit of a strange fight, to be honest with you. What did you take away from it? And obviously Israel Adesanya called out Bobby Knuckles next, and I think Bobby Knuckles will have a better performance this time round. But Israel Adesanya, what do you think happened last night?
I mean, you summed it up pretty pretty damn perfectly, if I gotta say, if I do want to tip my eloquent analyst hat to you, George, to you, Connor. Wow, I nearly called you George there.
That's
Crazy
okay. Shout out
times.
to George. He's not here with us
Shout
today,
out
but
to
he'll be
George.
with us next time.
He will be. But yeah, no, you summed it up perfectly, man. I do think like there was elements of the fight that was really interesting to watch. Like I think Marvin's just got such a weird style, and he's got such a weird stand-up style. Like the way that he kind of throws his punches is very strange. Not a very like a typical fighter for sure. But he's also wasn't that great either, and took a lot of shots from Israel. Israel was kicking the hell out of his legs all night long.
Yeah.
Literally, like he had no answer for the leg kicks whatsoever. He couldn't see that the timing was there. Like I was actually like, oh, he's about to throw a leg kick. Oh, he's about to throw a leg kick. Oh, he's about to throw a leg, and he would throw a leg kick every single time. Like, how could Marvin Vettori in the fight not recognize when this guy was about to throw a leg kick? It was literally like as soon as I think it's like he would switch his stance and then throw the leg kick, and it's like I at home could read that like in the fight, or your coaches, how is not someone not going into your ear and just being like, he's throwing it on like the third beat every single time. Like you've got to counter it. You've got to put your leg up. You've got to, slip backwards, slide backwards. You see a lot of guys do that as well, but he didn't do anything and his leg got chewed up. And I think ultimately that's kind of why Marvin didn't have a lot of pop in his in his punches, man. You could see he was trying to swing heavy on Izzy. Izzy's got fantastic movement, lateral movement. I really wish he wouldn't hang out so much on the cage, but I think he was maybe trying to prove a point as well. I'm talking about Izzy. I don't like it when he hangs out at the cage too much because he's susceptible to getting that clinch position put on him. And I think people just typically will go for something like that against someone who's such a strong striker as Izzy. So don't like that side of it. And I'm hoping that he'll adjust to that and try and keep the fight within the middle of the octagon. That just suits his style more. And I think he's able to open up a little bit better and throw much more a bigger variety of strikes. With this kind of fight, he's limited. He can't throw, one of his biggest tools that, in my opinion, is the question mark kick, right? Feints like he's going to kick him in the body or throw like a kick to the legs, and then he comes up with the head kick. When you're pressed up against the cage and your back is against the cage, and Marvin Vettori is not even just you're here and he's here, it's going to be very difficult for you to find the angle to throw a kick like that. So just that for me would just be the biggest thing that I would love to see more out of Izzy going forward, is just spending a little bit more time in the middle of the octagon. But man, you look at the rest of his other fights, like he does that this was just one time where he doesn't. So that's what makes me believe that he was trying to maybe prove a point against Marvin and just show like, hey man, I know that this is your game and I'm just gonna whoop you in here as well. And he just schooled him, man. It's just so bizarre to me that Marvin can think in any way, shape, or form that he won even a round, man. Like he was getting scored in every single round. Like he had nothing for him. The leg kicks, the combinations, like he had nothing for Izzy, and Izzy just styled on him. Literally, like the name says, like he literally just styled on him all night long. Made him second guess himself, kicked his leg out a few times. So, he was on the ground and trying to stumble back to his feet. That just, I could just imagine that absolutely shakes the shite out of your confidence. And it just makes you feel like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's getting the best of me. And someone like Marvin, who's so stubborn and hard headed, I could just imagine he was so frustrated with himself after a fight like that as well, where he just wasn't able to really turn it into that second and third gear and really like take the fight from Izzy. Because I think Izzy's style isn't indicative of someone that is like move forward and hit them with as many heavy shots as possible and get them out. Maybe before he fought for the title, that was a little bit more his style. But I think now that he has the title, he's very cognizant of the fact that these are all the best fighters in the world that he's going to be fighting against. These are all going to be within the top 5 ranking of his division. And he has to play it smart and use his skill set. He's very tall for the division. He's got great range and he's got great kicks. So he doesn't need to sit there and have a slugfest every single time, right? If the challengers coming in to fight him for the title, they ultimately need to be the one that puts him in that slugfest, so he's defending himself. And I don't think someone like Marvin really pushes the pace enough to get him into that kind of that flow where he's like, when you watch the Bobby Knuckles fight, right? He was in kind of like a flow because of the amount that Bobby Knuckles was coming forward at him. So I think pretty much any other person in the division is going to be a little bit more of a tougher fight for Izzy than Marvin Vettori. But I don't see Marvin Vettori getting a strap while Izzy as Adesanya is around. I think Izzy has just got too much for him, man. Even if Izzy lost the title to somebody else and they were like, oh, okay, Marvin needs to beat Izzy to get the title fight, Izzy schools him every single time. I think his style is just not something that Marvin Vettori can handle. And I don't think Marvin Vettori can fully understand and accept his Izzy's full skill set. And I think this is always going to be his detriment. And he's always going to have trouble going forward if he doesn't accept that, you know, maybe in some of these positions he wasn't doing so well. He was saying afterwards that he, in the boxing exchanges, he felt like he was having a bit more success. Who? When? Go back and watch the tape, my dude. You didn't have any success. You didn't have any success on the feet. On the ground, he got one position. He got a rear naked choke position once, and then Izzy spun out into him. And that was the only like biggest grappling moment. Outside of that, Izzy dominated you for the rest of the fight. Take your licking like a man, learn from your mistakes, and become better. Like that was kind of the rhetoric that Izzy was throwing out at the post-fight press conference, was like, he's, you know, when even from the Yan fight, right? He learned from the Yan fight. He doesn't hate Jan Blachowicz. He doesn't want to go after Jan Blachowicz, you know, and fight him tomorrow because of he beat him. He learned from his mistakes. He learned from those grappling positions. And you could see he put that into practice. Like when he was down on his back, he wasn't down for more than 5 to 10 seconds. Then he exploded and got back on either top position or got out of the position completely. So he's learned from his mistakes. And I'm hoping that Marvin, I think, and that will also allow the fans to like Marvin a little bit more, is if they show they see that he's humbled himself enough to learn from his mistakes and come back and become a better fighter. Because, you know, European fans, we don't have a lot of massive European fighters that we can really get behind. And Marvin Vettori's got a great style and a great story and all that kind of stuff. I would very much like to get behind him, but I just don't like his attitude, and I don't like his stubbornness in there as well. And I feel like, you know, he's matched up with Rafael Caldero, who's one of the best coaches, but also one of the most affable people. Just I want to give Rafael Caldero a hug, man. He just seems like the nicest guy in the world. To have someone like Marvin Vettori who's so stubborn, I can't imagine their dynamic is incredible all the time. So I'm hoping that someone like Rafael Caldero can crack the steel outer layer of his heart and just allow him to be a little bit more of a nicer guy. And then the people will love you, Marvin. People will love to jump on the Italian dream and move forward. But you got to be a better person. You got to be a better human being.
I'm with you, and it does make a difference. You know, if you have that type of character and then you're going out there and you're catching wins, then fair enough, because you're going to have the wins behind you. You know, one of my favorite quotes: "If you're going to be a rebel, make sure you win." That is, it's one of my favorite quotes, because if you're being a rebel and you're not catching W's and you're losing, there's no point in you doing it, man. There's no point in you doing it. And like you say, his attitude yesterday was just a little bit sideways. I felt like he could have been a little bit more respectful, especially after the bout. You know, Izzy kind of went over to him and was like, "Oh, you know, good fight, man. You know, you did what you had to do.
Respect.
I did what I had to do. Respect." And Marvin kind of was just a little bit touchy about it. And I just think, come on, you know, you took the loss, take the loss, man. I think from last night, if there's one thing everyone could take away, it's being humble in defeat, humble in victory, humble in defeat. Deiveson Figueiredo is a prime example here. We obviously just spoke about how well he took his loss, and he was very, very respectful to the person that won. And I feel like if Marvin had that same kind of outlook, then fans might see him differently, you know, and fans would have seen him differently after the performance yesterday. You know, if it had been like, you know what, I lost pretty bad here because I didn't do this, I'm going to go back, I'm going to work on it, but don't make too many excuses.
People respect him.
Yeah.
People respect him.
Yeah, don't make too many excuses about your own performance, but the other person was fantastic and they implemented their game plan. I couldn't implement mine. Fair play. Maybe we'll meet again, but I don't see them meeting again. You know, I don't see Vettori going away and fighting anyone so dominantly that he's going to get himself back to a title shot. Who does he fight in that division? You know, I can't really think of it. You know, I can't think.
Darren Stewart at 205.
Yeah, Darren Stewart, Paulo Costa, Kelvin Gastelum. But
yeah,
I don't see who he's going to fight, and I don't see who he's going to beat convincingly enough to make his way back to Israel Adesanya at the top of the tree. You know, I really, really don't.
He's now in that prime position where he gets to sit back, put his hands together, and hope that Israel Adesanya loses a fight in the future so he can have a title fight.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. And I don't see Israel Adesanya losing anytime soon, unless it will be to someone like Robert Whittaker, who is a fantastic, fantastic martial artist, you know. But then if Robert Whittaker wins the next fight convincingly, will we see a trilogy? Of course we will. That will take us into the middle of 2022, because both of these guys are known for liking a little bit of a break between fights, you know. So we're in the 6th month now. Will we see Izzy versus Rob before the end of the year? Fingers crossed. And then Rob likes to have Christmas and quite a bit of the summer off. And then we're looking at
Kids.
Yeah, exactly, man. And then we're looking at the middle of 2022 before we see these two gentlemen fight again, if Rob can win. So there's just so much going on, and there's so much at the top of that division as well that will hopefully unfold over the next coming months. But Prath, anything else you want to speak about on 263 before we wrap up the show?
I think we covered it pretty nice and neatly there, my friend.
We did. We covered absolutely everything I think that that we needed to cover and that we wanted to cover. But we are the Fight and Talk 2 team. Thank you very much for listening. As always, if you do like our content, please hit like, hit subscribe, leave us some comments and stuff. If we said something you do like and you agree with, let us know. Exactly the same if we said something that you don't. You can find our merchandise on the Etsy page as well. Just go onto the Etsy at Fight and Talk 2. We've got t-shirts, we've got beanie hats. So if you're in Australia and you want a beanie hat, fair enough. If you're in the UK and you want a t-shirt, we've got it for you as well. So we cover both sides of the world, man. But nothing else to say. Prath, thank you very much, as always, for jumping in. It was fantastic breaking down the card with you.
Yeah, man. I had a great time. It was a great card. And I'm really looking forward to the next number pay-per-view. We've got, I think it's Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier next.
10th of July,
which,
man.
if I remember correctly, might also be the first full meetup of the Fighting Talk 2 tripod as
Quite
well.
Possibly. I will be working very, very hard opening a restaurant, but I believe we may get together. I think it's a very,
may
very
be able to make it work.
Possibility.
TBD, in-person podcast.
We'll make it happen. But thank you very much for joining into the Fight Talk 2 channel. We will see you next time. Peace.